The Canadian Rockies, alpine faces thousands of feet high, massive glaciation, Arctic temperatures and variable snowpack. It all combines to create some of the finest ice climbs on the planet, and the hardest to get to, unless you have a horse. Like Alex Lowe, globe-trotting alpinist and mountain guide Charlie Fowler enjoys the freedom of unroped climbing.
Our feeling on ice is tremendously exhilarating because the tools and the techniques allow you to just do the wildest things without a rope and really move rapidly. People have to be really honest with themselves about what they can do and about using good judgment. That's why I say that knowing your limits is really important. And then when you do know your limits, stick to that. Don't let peer pressure or ego or anything like that get in the way of good judgment. I'm not afraid to back off an ice climb, even an easy one, if it doesn't feel right. I do that all the time. I go out and the conditions aren't right. I'll go up a little ways or whatever, and if it doesn't feel right, I'll just come down and go home, do something else, come back another day. I'm not afraid to do that. The tools and the techniques allow you to cruise in the mountains very, very fast. And that's what I like most, I think, in climbing. The thing that I enjoy the most is going out and climbing a mountain by myself. And the first thing I'm going to explain with using your feet is the fundamental way that you're going to swing them into the ice and get them to stick, and the positions they should be in. You want to have a pretty good aim with your feet, just as you do with your hand tools. And I'm going to look for little divots, little flat platforms, something like that, and swing decisively into that. The key thing here is that when I swing in, I want to have my foot be in a really comfortable position with the sole of my foot and my crampons parallel to the horizon.
Of all the kinds of climbing that I do, ice is the one that I feel the least confident about. It's actually quite intimidating stuff. It's very impermanent, for one thing. You know it's not going to be there very long. So when you're climbing, you start to almost do a mental countdown of just how long can I hang around on this thing before it melts and disintegrates. But every time I go ice climbing, I find I learn something new about the activity. It's a challenging kind of climbing pursuit. Ice climbing still scares me. There's something strange about it. It doesn't get much weirder than ice climbing. And every time I get out there on the ice, I realize that I'm a lot more rattled on ice than I am on any other kind of climbing. You have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in your equipment before you can accept that a few millimeters of metal sticking into melting ice is enough to keep you there. You can't be thinking you're going to fall. You have to be sure that you're going to stay there and get to the top. Because it's very hard to get off an ice climb if you are halfway up and decide you don't want to be there. So the first few ice climbs that I ever did were back in the 70s, when the kind of hits and crampons that people use were much more primitive than the stuff that people have today. Long before we had modern ice tools, this is what people used to climb with: wooden shafted ice axes. There's not much of a droop to the pick, and they didn't even have crampons. They used to climb ice slopes in the Alps in the 1930s with boots that had nails in the soles. And this is how they used to climb, by cutting steps with their ice axe. Now you can understand why climbers decided they needed crampons. The first ones weren't too unlike these. They were hinged so they could move around on your soft boots, and you strapped them to your feet with these long straps. They were hard to get on, and they weren't very user-friendly. By the early 80s, this is what we had for climbing ice. Rigid platforms that clamped onto your boots and with dagger-like front points. And some crampons even mimicked the shape of an ice axe. Then people started to experiment with ice axes. They started changing the shape of the pick. Like this. Now these things were even less user-friendly than the crampons. And here's the evolution of the ice axe. Curved shaft, so you don't bang your knuckles to bits on the ice when you strike the ice, and cleverly drooped picks that really sink into ice very well. Well, that's the short history of ice climbing. It brings us up to the present, and now it's time just to have some fun.
Besides being an accomplished writer, Greg Child has also summited K2 and Mount Everest. Originally from Australia, Greg now lives in Seattle, Washington. Here he is on one of America's most famous routes, the Rigid Designator.
Sometimes I wonder what the ice climbs of the future are going to look like. And I think that they'll probably look pretty much like what we've already achieved, except for the fact that we'll probably be doing them thousands and thousands of feet off the ground, in the Himalayas, in the Andes, in really, really remote places. I think to get the next level of alpine climbing, you're almost going to have to totally throw fear out the window. The kind of climbs that will be more futuristic are going to be ones that have virtually no possibility of getting protection in. I think you have to have your dream. Maybe it'll be something where you're reaching out with your ice tools around the roof, chipping in by a couple of millimeters into a goatee of ice. You're at 25,000 feet in the Himalayas, and you swing around on that ice axe, and you look down, and all you can see is the crampons swinging in the breeze. And that really excites me. That kind of climbing is what I dream of being able to do.
Mountain guide and veteran Himalayan alpinist Lyle Dean loves to put up first descent, especially in the San Juan Mountains of southern Colorado. Here Lyle works his way up a new climb in the Skylight area above Ouray.
Right there. We'll have to get set up the drill again somehow.
the ice climbing on that upper section on the left side was excellent. It was probably one of the steeper sort of overhang ice sections out of all those routes up there. When you're using the tools in a diagonal position, you're basically lay backing or laying away off the tools, similar to rock climbing. I like the ice climb and I like the rock climb, and so the combination of the two just